I'm Adrian Wasmith from Four Guy Fire Trucks. We're going to give you a brief introduction to the cab system on this truck, make some notes of things to be checked every day, the filters, the drains, the oil levels in the cab system. We're going to go through the switches and the gauges on the control panel and a couple of safety features of the control panel, and then we're going to flow foam and show you how to get the best out of the system. On the road side of your truck, on the pump panel, there's a small door to access the sight glass on the oil sump for the cab system. The sight glass is down the bottom here, and when it's filled, the system takes approximately 9 litres of oil, and the level should be centre of the glass or slightly above. Should never be below the sight glass. When the cab system is running, there is always going to be oil carried over in the air system, and the oil level will drop over time. So the oil level should be checked every morning before the truck is started. Next to the sight glass, there is a cap that turns anti-clockwise to undo. This is the filler line. Care should be taken with this. You should never fill or check the oil levels after the truck has been run, because the oil will be hot and you will get a reading which is higher than correct. You should always check to make sure that there's no pressure in the system when you're removing the cap, and remove the cap slowly, so if there is a slight amount of air, it will get vented. There are 3 filters on the system to be checked according to the manufacturer's schedule. First of all, on the intake of the compressor, just behind the main inspection door, there is an air filter. On the curb side, inside the inspection door, there is an oil air filter. Also on the curb side, below the pump intake, there is the oil filter for the system, which is attached to the heat exchanger. This cab system is cooled by water from the pump. There is a heat exchanger, and the water line has a Y strainer on the intake to the heat exchanger, which needs to be checked periodically. All we need to do is open the valve to drain any water out of the system, remove the nut on the end of the Y strainer, and the strainer will come out. It just needs to be cleaned out, and then it can be put back in again. Inside the pump house, on the pump panel, we have 2 switches and several lights and gauges. First of all, the main switch for the cab system is a toggle switch. When it's got a small safety on it, it has to be lifted up to engage. So lift and push forward to engage the pump, and lift and pull back to disengage. When it's engaged, the green light will come on. There's 2 safety features with this switch. First of all, cannot engage the cab system with an RPM on the pump more than 900 RPM. If you try to engage it with more than 900, nothing will happen until you reduce the RPM to below 900. The second feature is there's an over temperature light and also a gauge. You should watch the gauge, make sure the water cooling on the cab system is doing a good job and keeps the temperature steady. If the temperature gets too high, the overheat light will come on. The other light is an overspeed light, which will tell you if the RPM is too great for the PTO. If you carry on and go higher RPM, it will cut out the cab system eventually. The second switch is the cab system load, unload and fixed switch. The cab system should always be started in the unload position, and once the cab system is started, the pressure on the gauge will be approximately 40 psi. If using the cab system to supply air to power tools, the fixed position can be used, which will set a preset pressure on the gauge to 150 psi. If using the CAF's compressor to make a CAF's foam, the switch will be put in the auto position, and in this case the air pressure on the gauge will follow closely to the actual pump discharge pressure on your water pump. One thing to note with the CAF system, the oil is cooled by water from the pump. The CAF system shouldn't be used unless the water pump is pumping water. if you're not using the water pump to fight a fire, the best option is to open the tank to pump and open the tank full slightly to circulate water. This will provide plenty of cooling water to cool the calf system. The actual operation of the calf system on the fire truck: first of all, establish water flow from your foam pump. So either draft or open your tank to pump. And if you're fighting a fire, open the discharge. Once you've got water flowing, the foam system can be engaged. Green light to say the foam system is running. The digital display will show the amount of water flowing. Once you have foam flowing out the nozzle, the calf system can be engaged and the system can be put into the auto mode. Now you can increase the RPM above 900 RPM to get the amount of pressure you want flowing through the discharge. Once you have air, the air valve in relation to the discharge, speedlet 2 in this case, can be opened fully. And to control the quality of the foam, you can open the discharge more to get a wetter foam and close it down less to get a drier quality foam. Now we have the water pump engaged. We are going to establish the water flow out of our speed lane number 2. The next stage is to turn the foam system on. We can see we are flowing 72 gallons per minute at the present.
Good morning, my name is Rick Penner. I'm a contract administrator with Fort Garry Fire Trucks. This morning we've got the Fort Smith 4-man crown out in the test bay. We've just been through the video and the operation of the calf system, and now we're going to go through the other side of the truck, the pump, the controls, pump and gauge, etc. Now we've relocated into the pump house and we're going to do a walkthrough on the controls for Fort Smith. Based on the 2 trucks that Fort Smith have, which are pretty much identical to these, we're going to leave the actual operation until later. Believe that walking through this in this manner is going to be sufficient for the training. So starting from my far left side, we have intake number 2 control, which is on the officer side of the truck. The 4-inch stores discharge officer side. Discharge 4, officer's side. Speedlay 2 is the officer's side. Discharge number 3 is the rear of the truck. And then the tank fill control. As we go up onto the panel, we have the 3 rating and instruction placards for the foam system, which is what Adrian went through just a little while ago. We have a couple of warning tags above that. As we move to my right and into the center of the panel, you see again the foam control, foam level gauge, the pressure governor, and the controls for the calf system, which Adrian has gone through. Moving further to my left, which now goes towards the driver's side of the truck, we have the tanked pump control, we have the trash line, the monitor, speedlay 1, discharge 2, discharge 1, and intake number 1, these 3 all being on the driver's side pump panel. Up above that we have the 2 air controls for the calf's outlets. We have our bypass valve, the heat exchanger valve, we have the test taps, and we have the light switches. Crown light, both red and white, the pump house interior lights, the crown heaters, pump house heaters, and then the left and right defrost fans, which are in the upper corners of the crown. So based on a wet pump operation and the fact that we have now arrived at the scene, the pump has been engaged in the cab, the operator needs to immediately exit the cab, come into the crown, and open tank to pump. Continue to put water into the pump, prime only if needed, circulate water, open the tank fill until you're ready to actually flow water out any of the discharges. If it's necessary to prime, then it is advantageous to change the governor from pressure mode to RPM mode, which is a press and hold function. Then you can manipulate the engine throttle while you're priming. Once prime is achieved, then again you're going to circulate water and go back to pressure mode. If you do not go to the pressure mode, you have no safety in terms of overpressurization of a hand line, and accidents can occur based on that. So we've achieved water into the pump, we're circulating water into the pump, we're not quite ready to discharge. The operator will get instructions in terms of which discharge has to be open to flow water onto the fire. One of the things that an operator has to be cognizant of is what's going on with his pump. These two controls can be used. The bypass discharges water from the pump back into the tank. It is a very small line. Reliance on this for pump overheat may not be the best idea. That's why I advocate using tank fill, opening it and recirculating water. The heat exchanger allows pump water to flow through a core that also has engine coolant circulating through it. In extreme temperature conditions, it may be advantageous to open the heat exchanger valve and help to cool the engine. We're just going to spend some time to go over the pressure governor control. This is an FRC in control 400 governor that gives you both pump intake and pump discharge readouts in an LED. We have a date and time display in the center, as well as we have the pressure and RPM controls with throttle ready light in the center, your twist style throttle control here, and a return to idle button in the center. As we move over to my right on the pressure governor, we have an RPM display, we have a silence button if an alarm comes up, and we have a menu button. Below those buttons we have 4 LED indicators that give oil pressure, engine temperature, transmission temperature, and battery voltage indications. These are simple bar graphs only. Please understand where your bar graphs read as opposed to the temperature and pressure readings on the dash gauges in the cab. The menu button, when activated, will take you through a number of functions. Engine temperature, engine oil pressure, battery voltage, engine hours, transmission temperature, pump hours. And then we come back to engine temperature and it'll revert back to the date and time in a couple of seconds. One of the important things to remember in terms of draining your truck is how to drain the truck. Once the pump is shut down, the tank to pump and the tank fill are both closed, then the operator needs to exit the truck and open the drains on both sides of the truck as well as the rear if applicable. On the bottom corner of the panel, we have a drain procedure label. Along the bottom of the panel in a row are the variety of drains that we have, and starting from the furthest point forward on the truck, we've got a group of 3 drains, then we have a group of 4 as well as the main pump drain. Properly draining the truck involves opening all the drains, left side, rear, right side of the truck first, then returning back to your start point. The operator can go back into the crown and open all the discharge and intake valves. Then after a minute or so, come out and remove all the caps off the discharges, the intakes, and the main suction port. The premise is to relieve pressure in stages and avoid any accidents with pressurized discharges and caps striking people and injuring them. Now we're back in the cab of the Freightliner M2106, and we're going to look at pump engagement, the console, the siren controls, and a variety of the dash controls. Starting from the left, the operator's position, driver's position, we have a standard Freightliner gauge cluster. As we move to the right, transmission selector pad, and above that we have a Weldon seatbelt indicator system. You'll notice that we currently have two red lights. There are two of us in the seat positions and our seatbelts are not fastened. Once the seatbelts are fastened, these lights will turn green. The operator has the advantage of both an audible and a visual signal in terms of seatbelts done up properly. The seats in the rear are also connected to this system. As we move over towards the center of the dash, we have the screen for the zone defense backup camera. Activates in reverse. It is also possible to turn the camera on and have a full-time view of the rear of the truck. Coming down into the lower portion of the dash, we have four switches here. We have a mirror heat switch. We have an alternating headlight flasher switch that once activated is only active with park brake released. As we come up, we have a light test switch. When this momentary rocker switch is activated, it will run through a sequence of checking all the running lights on the chassis. To the left of that, we have the regen inhibit switch. In the normal position, the regen will occur as it's required. If the switch is activated, regen is inhibited, which can present problems to the future life of the truck. The switch should always be in the off position, and the regen should happen when the vehicle needs it to. As we come over to the right, we have the park brake in the center. Moving further, we have the exhaust brake switch currently in the off position. When on, rocker switch is up. We have a light indicating activation. Next to that, we have the diff lock switch. Below that, we have the filter minder, the air restriction indicator gauge for the engine air filter. As we move up and over, we have the on-off control for the Webasto heater, which is located in the bottom of the pump house, provides added heat to the entire vehicle. Moving across, we have a manual engine fan switch. With the switch in the off position, the fan will cut in and out as it's needed based on engine temperature. If the switch is turned on, the fan will run constantly. In cold weather and in pumping operations, it is better to have the fan turned off to run automatically. At the bottom, we have two lights. We have one for compartment door ajar and a warning for do not move apparatus when the light is on. We also have a warning light included for ladder down. There's an electric ladder rack on the curb side of the truck, and when the ladder is down for ladder access, then this light would be activated when the park brake is released. Moving farthest right, we have two 12-volt power outlets, one of which is currently used for a wireless mic for the radio system. This is the wireless mic that was included in the build based on customer request. Bottom center of the dash, we have the standard Freightliner heater controls. They are pretty basic. We have fan control, you have an air position control, and you have a temperature control. As we come to the console, the upper left has the pump shift with the truck properly positioned, park brake applied, wheel chocks in place if that is what the SOGs call for, then the pump can be safely engaged. Transmission is in neutral. The pump engage starts with pulling up the lock collar, moving down to center, and moving down to the lowest position. The pump engaged light would come on. Such as the truck is running and we enter drive, we're going to get 4-4 come up on the display. As the transmission engages, then we're going to get an OK to pump light. Once pumping is complete, then the transmission is returned to neutral, and the operator has to pay attention to the speedometer needle. Speedometer has to register down to 0 before the pump can be disengaged. Once the speedometer is down to 0, then slowly release the pump shift, and you're back able to go into road mode. As we move to the right side of the console, upper corner, we have the siren controller, which is a smart controller. The light controls are on the switch at the bottom. The siren controls are in this row, and the work lights, scene lights, etc. are in the bottom row. Emergency lights are controlled from this switch position. Below that, we have a radio that the customer requested, so we have installed it in the console.